guest we have today is one of the most interesting people you're ever going to hear from, most certainly at this summit and most certainly this year, because there is so much happening. For an audience of this kind, I don't think the company that this guy belongs to needs any introduction. Because if you are at Invest Karnataka, then you have heard of nothing. It's a company that has completely disrupted the smartphone space. It's a company that has a pedigree of one of the largest phone makers in the world. And it's a company that has the eyes of the biggest firms in the world looking very closely at its every move because of how adventurous it has been. So, Akis Evangelidis, if I pronounced that correctly, my apologies if I didn't. I'd like to just quickly start by making one small confession. I'll start with a show of hands. Is everyone awake in the audience right now? Everyone's listening? Okay, how many of you used to use BlackBerry phones? Okay, this is Invest Karnataka, so quite a few. How many of you use an iPhone? Okay, a lot. Okay, so Akis, I've used an iPhone for the last 12 years now. And ever since Invest Karnataka invited me to do this session, and since I started doing my research on you for this event, I might be changing phones for the first time.
That's good. Hopefully more people to do.
I'm very happy to say just before I took my flight to come here, I ordered a nothing phone. So I'm going to be getting a nothing phone in a few days from now. I couldn't bring it here with me, but I was impressed enough to actually even think about exiting the Apple ecosystem. So congratulations, well done on that. But Akis, I'd like to start by asking you about nothing. You know, everybody loves the counterintuitiveness of the name. You know, the name is nothing, and it's so memorable. How did the name Nothing come about? I'd like to start that out by asking you that.
Sounds good. Before diving into it, just out of curiosity, how many of you have heard about Nothing before? Oh, wow. Decent crowd.
This is a Karnataka audience. Of course they've heard of Nothing.
All right. Nothing. I've been getting this question quite a lot. I guess it remains top of mind, which is ticks the first box in terms of the goal of the name for the company. But basically, when we started Nothing, I'm half Greek. I was born in Athens, and I was putting a Excel list with like different names in the Greek mythology and so on. But every time I would get to a name that had a meaning or that could work, either the social media handles weren't available or the .com wasn't available. So we kind of kept on brainstorming for like 2 weeks. We weren't getting anywhere and so on. And, you know, as users, we're thinking, okay, what's like the end state of technology? You know, how it should feel like. And then Carl Pei, co-founder and CEO of Nothing, he eventually came up with, I've been discussing this with my sister, like, what about Nothing? You know, at the end of the day, you know, you want a technology to be embedded all around you, there to kind of empower you, leverage it when you need it, but it shouldn't be like in your way. And I think it's a very interesting concept. You know, nowadays, technology sometimes it sort of divides us, disconnects us from the world around us. So be working on the product ecosystem that's like super well integrating all around you, serving you, empowering you to do more versus kind of distracting you from the world, yet feel like Nothing felt like a good long-term vision to be working towards. And then we said, okay, why not? Then it took a few days to kind of grow in us. Then we checked on Instagram. You can register the name then. On Twitter, was called Twitter back then, the handle wasn't being used for a few years. So we just emailed a few friends at Twitter and Instagram. And after 24 hours, we had the two @Nothing handles. We managed to get the Nothing.tech at a good price, and we're like, all right, let's go for it.
By the way, Akis is not new to India. He's been to India many times before, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, he's called Akis Bhai in the office. You know, tell us the story behind that. You know, even Carl Pei, who's the founder and formerly of OnePlus, he's also called Carl Bhai on,
Bhai.
on Twitter, which became a big viral story. So why are you Akis Bhai already?
No, I mean, it was a year ago. We're ramping up to launching our Phone 2A. Back then, there was a lot of like tension on social media. Everyone was expecting for a product. And I think it came up from just Carl replying to someone, okay, bye. And then all of a sudden, that person say, okay, Carl, bye. And then Carl changed his Twitter name. I changed my Twitter name, and it became a thing online. The internet took over and did the rest.
So I'm going to call you Akis Bhai for the rest of this interaction.
Sounds
because,
good.
Because nothing is a company that has survived possibly the most brutal industry in the world right now, smartphones. It's the only, it's one of maybe a small handful of companies that has been able to survive for more than a few years. And not just survive, but do really well and make a big splash. So I wanted to ask you about that. You started out in 2020. What's that journey been like? How much of a struggle has it been? You started big in terms of, the way you marketed nothing. The name itself made a splash for itself. But how difficult has it been lasting this long?
Yeah, actually, no one in the last 10 years entered this industry successfully, being an independent brand. Of course, there are other sub-brands as part of much bigger groups, which make things a lot easier. But as an independent brand, we are the only one that managed to do that successfully in the last 10 years. And yeah, it's been a hell of a journey, for sure. Survive was one of our core founding values. We're like, okay, we need to get to the next year, to then eventually get bigger, have more product capabilities, and do more. So that's definitely been at the core of it. But the way we approached it, so when we started nothing, the whole thing was, I guess from a user standpoint, we didn't feel excited about what the industry had to offer back then. Everything looked the same. There was not a lot of negativity around tech. All the products, the iterations were minor, just extra megapixel, extra kind of gigahertz, whatever. So for us, it was more, doing it for ourselves in the way kind of we wanted to bring back that excitement we had when we, saw the first kind of iPhone keynote launch, or those first magic moments interacting with products like the iPod, and basically the journey started from there. And then we realized, as we were talking to more and more people felt the same way at us. They thought it would be crazy to even try to take a stab at it, but sort of that gave us a lot of confidence in terms of getting this started. We had like Tony Fadell, the inventor of the iPod, that was part of our seed round. We had Casey Neistat, we were watching his videos. We're like, fuck yeah, let's go, guys. I think you're onto something. And then, but then it was, okay, where do we start? So each year in the last kind of 4 years has been quite strategic. So year one, it was about building a proof of concept. Again, people were calling us crazy to even think about entering in this industry. Everyone feels it's oversaturated, competing against the biggest brands in the world. So our first proof of concept for the year one was to bring a product to market successfully. And here, quite rapidly, we gravitate around design differentiation. Everything looked the same. It was really hard to identify which product is from which brand. So when we went to the design experimentation, we had set a guiding principle. From 2 meters away, you need to be able to recognize a nothing product without looking at the logo. So we came up with this kind of semi-transparent design identity. Then we decided to enter with the TWS market, the true wireless earbuds. And here we introduced our kind of transparent design, which created like shit ton of hype back in the days. I remember when we started selling on the first day, I was at the beach with my wife, and when the product went on sale, we had 100,000 people on our website. We're like, so order some champagne. But then I didn't know what was to come next, because it was just the start of the journey with a lot more struggles. So this product went really well. We sold over 500,000 products, so that it allowed us to raise more capital and start the real deal, the smartphone. And the smartphone, why so many brands have failed, is the value chain required to bring a smartphone to market is extremely complicated. And there is a big and, there is no room for mistakes. If there is one element that falls apart, you go bankrupt straight away. There is no way you can make this up. So it's starting from product development all the way down to kind of, your go-to-market strategy, all the way down to the marketing. Like if the initial steps are there, but then your marketing fails, you don't create enough demand, you have overstock, cash flow issues, and it's game over. So with Phone One, it was extremely challenging because we had to build a supply chain, we had to develop product, build the teams, get ready with all the sales partners and so on. And to make things easier, it was in the middle of COVID. But yeah, thank God we managed to make it work. It was quite an intense period for us and definitely survival mode. But yeah, we managed to launch the smartphone on time, which is an important part because just for context, as a new entrant in the industry, in an industry that no one has managed to enter successfully in the last 10 years, all the supply chain partners have lost confidence in terms of investing in a new entrant. So when you start, you got to pay everything up front. All the components, everything up front, then it gets shipped to you. You then need time to manufacture, then you ship to partners, then you go on sale, and those partners are huge already, so they have payment terms with like 60 days, and your cash has gone like 6 months before, and you get it 6 months after if the launch goes well. So if anything breaks down, if the product doesn't kind of get developed on time and the timeline gets pushed, you go bankrupt. If your marketing doesn't work well, you go bankrupt, and so on and so on. So anyway, we managed to get through all this for Phone One. We launched the product. Again, a lot of buzz at the time in the market. Did extremely well. We sold over 700,000 products. And then this led us to kind of year 3. So now that we had successfully entered the smartphone industry, it was then, okay, raising a bit more money, building an internal product capabilities, because for Phone One, we're relying on a lot of external partners. So we really kind of spent a lot more time on the product, refining, and sort of a lot of learnings came through Phone One as well. And eventually we launched Phone Two, which was, to me, the sort of proof point that we could deliver on the flagship level experience. I remember MKBHD, who is the big tech reviewer in the US and has very direct judgments on product. He gave us the most improved smartphone of the year. So that was quite encouraging. And then what happened across the 3 years, we had then built this very unique offering for nothing, both on the hardware design level, but also on the software. As with Phone 2, we introduced our own kind of software version of Android. Last year, we had to scale. We had, okay, you've built a strong kind of positioning. Now you need to prove that you can scale as a brand. So we took this kind of very unique product offering that we've managed to refine and continuously develop over the first 3 years, and then start bringing this into other price segments, including with the Phone 2A and our sub-brand CMF. And thankfully, it worked, because historically those price segments are only focusing on value for money, who can have the most megapixel for the best value, and so on and so on. But there is this kind of price war, which is getting a bit ridiculous, and to some extent with no added value. So for us, our assumption was, okay, we can actually break through in those segments, just bringing that kind of unique user experience. So we did that with Phone 2A. Again, it was another key milestone for us. We were all a bit stressed going into the launch, but after 24 hours, we had sold 100,000 units. And then we doubled this up with the CMF Phone 1 that launched a few months later. And overall, last year, we were the fastest smartphone and audio company in the world, and we're here today, and hopefully we'll be doubling up in 2025.
Akis, like you said, the smartphone industry, has just these small sort of incremental improvements with each model that comes in from the big guys. A better camera, a faster chip. It's been years since we saw anything really big in terms of a usability leap or an interface leap. As a company that is design forward and marries aesthetics with the user experience, just give us an inside view of what a day is like at Nothing. What do you guys talk about? When you and Carl are sitting across a table or in your room or on your couch or whatever it is, and you're thinking about, okay, we've sold these 100,000 phones, and everyone's buying it with the smartest. We were the fastest growing last year. what does a conversation about that next step look like?
That's a good question. um, I guess it's always about balancing short term and long term. You know, in early years was definitely day to day. You know, keep going to survive another day. Now that we've proven ourselves that our teams are a lot bigger, I think the opportunity for us is actually infinite if you think about it. You know, the smartphones is a gateway to everyone's product ecosystem. So if we do well there is just so much more to be done. But then also, what we came to realize, when we were first thinking, okay, how can we just make a product look different in year one, that kind of mindset was just not about how the product looks. What triggered it eventually start building within our organization this kind of innovation muscle, because it was more about kind of rethinking everything. The hardware design, but then the software design, and everyone has been developing this very kind of creative muscle, trying to look at things in different ways that are currently being made. And you realize that bigger players, they have $1 billion business that are working, right? So they don't have a big incentive to do things drastically different or taking a huge bet. Whereas for us, that's what we've been doing since day one. And I think you were talking about user interface, and I think that's where the biggest opportunity is. Ever since the first iPhone was launched, the sort of app experience it has evolved in a way, but, not drastically, largely the same. So, kind of rethinking, okay, what that's going to be in the future, especially now with kind of AI coming across, and we're having a lot of fun. And I think the opportunity is huge to kind of rethink the whole way of the kind of smartphone interface and how we're interacting with it and how it will be delivering more value to you and less about being extracting value, because that's also a key issue that ever since we started Nothing we've been trying to solve. Like smartphones, to some extent, with time, have been kind of extracting value. It's disconnecting you from your friends, families. It's sort of getting you, like you unlock your smartphone to do A, and all of a sudden you do B. So this is where we have the glyph interface. We introduce a monochrome mode as well on the apps that will kind of eradicate the colorimetry of the apps that are being kind of engineered to grab your attention, to have a more intentional smartphone usage. Because I do think there is a lot of work to be done, to ensure that technology is there to empower you to do more versus kind of extracting value from you. And now, yeah, that's what we kind of bouncing around, what the future could look like.
One of Nothing's most well-known and beloved innovations has been the glyph interface with LED strips designed to sort of demarcate your attention while minimizing your workload in terms of your phone. Which is again, like everything to do with Nothing, it's counterintuitive because it wants to make you use your phone less and give you more information as quickly as possible, which is actually amazing. And that's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to my Nothing phone more than anything else. A reason not to pick up the phone, really. But, clean design, Akis, clean design and that design aesthetic isn't new. You've seen Apple play with that for a number of years. Apple is acknowledged as a company that is in some ways mastered, minimalist design. I've seen an interview of yours where you said some of the design aesthetical choices that Nothing has taken hark back to early Apple days as well. So, how do you really compare the two? Is Apple really, unable to move ahead of its current design aesthetic in your view? Are they looking at you closely?
Nah, I think, they have no incentive to change what they're doing. It's going quite well for them. But I think that's where opportunity lies. It sort of became the villain that they wanted to fight at first. And that's where I think there is room for a challenger brand, to take a bolder approach. A lot of things have evolved in the past, 20 years. And what's working for them is definitely not going to work for us. And therefore, that's where opportunity is. Like, we can come in to have a much bolder approach on what we do, starting with our design. if anything, I wouldn't call our design kind of minimalistic. Like the whole thing was, with our design, we wanted to trigger a sense of emotion. Like when you look at design, you kind of react to it versus just kind of the phone sitting there. And then, that approach in terms of having a bolder take is not only hardware but software as well. And that's where, for us, the opportunity will be in the future. So definitely doing less of what Apple is currently doing.
What's the, in terms of user experience of Nothing phones, what's the best thing you hear from your users? What's the feedback that you love or value the most from your users?
Feedback, generally speaking, or what people that buy our phones, what do they
people
prefer?
Who buy your phones and use your phones.
Yeah. So software is number one in our Net Promoter Score survey, which is great because that's the core of the user experience, and software is key to kind of build affinity and retention. So this is actually quite important, and I'm quite excited about this because we've been kind of working aggressively on software for just the past 3 years. Now we're scaling up the teams quite drastically to kind of bring even a bolder approach around the whole user interface of our smartphone, and I think it's a big opportunity. But yeah, mostly it's Nothing OS comes at the top of the user satisfaction. And also saw a big 91 Mobile in India. They run a survey like your favorite software experience, and Nothing OS was on top of iOS. So I think we're heading in the right direction, and design, of course.
In an age where marketing takes up so much space, there's so much competition for people's attention because of social media and influencers and that age, Akis. Nothing has been very aggressive from the get-go in terms of, in some ways, reinventing how to market a smartphone. There've been lots of guerrilla tactics, a lot of asymmetric, unconventional marketing. That clearly was designed to kind of kick up the dust of the industry and not take a conventional route. Give us a sense of that, because you're the head of marketing as well. So the way Nothing has marketed itself basically flows from this guy. So tell us about how that happened.
So the way we think about marketing, and I guess I highly advise for everyone in the room that's running any kind of B2C business, is you need to be looking for asymmetric advantages in the way what's working for current players. You won't be able to compete. Eventually you can use some of it, but you won't be able to do better. They have infinite more resources, infinite more budgets. So you need to think of ways that you're going to build a differentiation and at much higher efficiency cost. So for us, I guess it started in two ways: seeing where our competitive advantage lies. We are a brand. We are arguably the only founder-led brand with, especially with CallPay. So that was one. Then the other one is we're a startup at the time, so we are very agile. So we can look at best practices across other industries and kind of incorporate at a much faster pace and trial and error them than much larger companies. So, and then the third one, which I think is almost obvious, but to be honest, a lot of companies, especially in the smartphone space, don't get it right, is just understanding your users. I think Gen Zs are looking for, authenticity. They want to relate to brands. And I think the way kind of marketing has been operated has just been marketing from 10 years ago. It hasn't evolved with this kind of new generation, which is driving the culture. So for us, quite rapidly, we focused on content. We were documenting everything we were doing early days, giving a very transparent view of our companies and how things were going, and also providing very exclusive insight of the behind the scenes. Big corporations have this kind of corporate red tape where, they cannot disclose things, or if it discloses, it's under NDA, everyone needs to be PR trained and all that stuff. And it just slows down, and it just kind of create that distance with the end users. So for us, content has been a key focus, showcasing the behind the scenes and also creating content that people relate to. Even Carl has been reviewing a lot of competitive products across our YouTube channel, which people really enjoy. They love it. They find it very refreshing. So this this has been a key thing. And then the other one, as a new brand, community. I think there has been a lot of, excuse my French, but a lot of bullshit when it comes to kind of community, in a kind of community management in a truthful way. And for us, when you as a new brand, we couldn't succeed on our own. We need to have a user base very strong, and that we turn them into advocates. And that started by kind of blurring the line between people and the company. So we started when we closed our Series A with Google Venture, we allocated $1.5 million for our initial fans and supporters to have skin in the game. So we wouldn't just look at them as people that support the brand from the sideline, but like, okay, you guys are engaged, come on board, put whatever you want, and then hopefully you'll have that financial upside, which by now they do, for the ones that entered, the massive upside for the ones that entered back in early 2021. So yeah, we had this 1.5 million allocation. It actually ran out in under 54 seconds. So it was quite nuts. And since then, we've been kind of integrating community more and more into the company. And this year, last year, we did quite an ambitious co-creation project where basically our users designed a limited edition of Phone 2A. And this, as cool as it sounds, it does require a lot of investment, both financial and also team bandwidth capacity to pull it off. But for us, it was, again, kind of remaining authentic to this kind of community engagement we had set ever since we started the company. And to a final note, what we also did to ensure we in check with the user at all time, from those people that have invested, every year we elect a community board observer, and that person sits in our board meetings and just kind of funnels through all the user feedback to ensure that at all time we're going to be in check with the end users. Because I think that's, if you look at bigger companies out there, a lot of them have just lost sight. They're shipping millions of products, they're doing all those big advertisement campaigns and so on, but they don't really resonate across that audience. And this is where I think it's a huge opportunity for us to almost become a generational brand amongst the Gen Zs.
No, I'm gonna dig a little deeper into the the community-driven model in just a bit. But when you said that nothing as a startup is able to do some of those things that the larger legacy brands maybe hesitate to do, and you also said they have no reason to because they're doing so well and they're such giant companies. But in that case, you'd be the best person to ask, Akis, which is, what is the next big thing in smartphones? Apart from AI, I'll come to AI separately, but what is the next big thing that users can look at as far as smartphones are concerned? India is, one of the world's biggest smartphone markets. Or give us a list of things that you think will become realities in the next few years in smartphone devices.
Yeah, I think when it comes to form factor of the smartphone, I don't think it's going to be changing anytime soon, to be honest. I think that's going to be the case. But what will evolve and where we're quite bullish on is on the overall kind of user experience and user interface, especially with kind of AI coming into the picture. There's just so much opportunity, and I think it's not going to be, we've been talking about IoT and ecosystem for the longest period of time, but it's not just about like syncing your photos and all that stuff. Actually creating that ecosystem and that sort of fluid user experience that can shift from mobile to audio to different set of products, and eventually creating that ecosystem that we're mentioning at the beginning, where eventually everything feels like nothing. I think that's where things are heading. So not so much from a pure hardware standpoint, but really from a user interface innovation. And I think that's, now with AI, the opportunity is huge.
Is nothing going to stay with just smartphones for the moment, and your ear devices, or are you thinking of other devices as well?
I mean, we still, we don't take anything for granted. I think there is still a long way to go, and just the fact that not everyone has raised their hand when I ask about nothing, we still have a lot of work to be done. But I think it's first ensuring we kind of scale our smartphone business. That's the sort of gateway to that kind of ecosystem for people. And then once you crack this, then the sky is the limit, to be honest. If you manage to crack the smartphone industry, then there is just so much more you could do. So it's more about after strategically kind of see which product comes when. But arguably you could do everything.